You know, there's a subject on which most of us can agree, that when you were bad, your mom had cause to put you over her knees. Now, be you black, white, Latino, or copper-colored brown, everybody knows what's happening when they hear that sound. It first starts off with you begging and pleading. You talking about, mama, come on, mama, I didn't do that. Then you start crossing your heart and opening to God. Now you know that's a fact. And when all your crying and your jumping around don't do no good, you plead with your mama. Come on, mama, have mercy on me if you would. But your mama just looks at you. And she utters some words that you just don't believe are true. When she says, baby, this is going to hurt me a whole lot more than it hurt you. Now, before my mama would whoop me, she'd give me a long talk, asking me if I was going to do that thing again. And I said, no, mama, hoping the beating I could halt. Now, my mama's small. She only stood about 5 foot or so. But when she had that strap in her hand, I tell you, Mike Tyson would have begged her to let him go. She derived energy from a source I don't know where. And when I thought she was just about finished, well, she was just coming up for air. And when I was open and there were no tears, she said, oh, you ain't gonna cry. You must not be hurting your behind. So she'd start all over again. Nah. Then when she was finally finished, she said, now you got something you want to say? And I did, because mama, there was something I just didn't understand. No how, no way. Because although I'm the one that's getting whooped and I'm the one feeling blue, how do you want to say this is going to hurt me a whole lot more than it hurt you? I took me a survey. I did some talking to cousins and friends, and I found out mamas are the same wherever you go. It seems poor kids just can't win. And then mamas down south, they take the cake. And don't mess around and let your grandmama whoop you. If you do, you done made a big mistake. Because I can remember my grandmama, she called my cousin, she said, come here, Mitch. I want you to go out to that tree there yonder and cut me a switch. And I believe to this day, my cousin looked for the biggest switch he could find. But it would have been a whole different story if that switch had been for his behind. He came back with one and it made this whooshing sound when it hit. And when my grandmama got a hold of you, grandmama didn't know when to quit. But now that I'm grown and I got a head full of gray hair, I have a better understanding of mamas, and I know them whoopings only meant I care. And with my own children, I done tried time out, no TV, send them to their rooms. It don't do no good. Before too long, that ill behavior would soon resume. So I said, let me go back to the old school, because my mama was wise. She was nobody's fool. So now when my children do something bad, I find myself uttering the same words, and it's true. Because I sure don't feel like giving you this whooping. That's why it's going to hurt me a whole lot more than it hurts you. All right, good evening and welcome to what's been called farewell performance. We'll talk about that during the question and answer period. But a couple of my friends asked me to sort of put together a show. And they suggested, I want you to do this poem, and do this poem, and do this poem. So I put together some of the favorites that people have asked me to do. My mother used to tell me when I used to do that poem, she said, make sure you let people know that I was not the monster that you made me out to be. So that poem was based loosely on some things that happened to me as a youngster. This is a poem I wrote about my student, one of my students. Actually, it was several students, but I used to hear them using expressions that I didn't always understand what they meant. And this is one. He used to keep saying, it's all good. So I wrote a poem about it. I don't know why brothers be fronting. I was kicking it with this brother the other day. He told me he had just lost his job. He said the man caught him smoking some weed in the bathroom. He couldn't understand why the man was so upset. He said, hell, I was on my lunch break. But the man had to let him go. And he tells me in the very same breath, yo man, it's all good. I said, brother man, my sister's carrying your second child. This is the third job you done lost in 4 months. The rent is due, the fridge is bare, and I can no longer continue to be your personal ATM. He looks at me, give me some pound, he said, yo man, this is all good. I said, no, it ain't. Took out a loan so my boy could go to college. He drops out. Now he tells me he can't find a job up to his standards. So I said, well, why don't you just get something in Mickey D's until something better comes along? He tells me he can't do that. Meanwhile, I got Fannie Mae or Sally Mae, somebody calling my house every day about the loan. White man done gone and sheathed my check. He walking around sporting Timberlands. I'm walking around in Payless. He be burning up the gas in my car, claiming he's looking for a job, but I'm finding big blunts in my ashtray, and he got the nerve to get in my face talking about, yo, Pop, you need to chill. It's all good. I said, no, it ain't. Baby girl said she wants to get married. I said, okay, that sounds cool. She said she don't want nothing big, just a little something. I said, that's even cooler. For her out-of-work husband to be and his mama, they got other ideas. I think they think I got big cash stashed away someplace, so they commenced to calling in the caterers and the decorators and the wedding dressmakers, and I said, whoa, man. Y'all got to pull up. I ain't got it like that. Then my out-of-work son-in-law, he says, yo, man, look, your daughter only gets married once, and you're like, when I hook up with this job, I'm going to give you a little something. So, yo, man, it's all good. I said, nah, wait a minute. When you brothers don't take on the responsibility that you're responsible for, it ain't all good. When you can look at everybody else to blame instead of looking at the man in the mirror, it ain't all good. Only when you brothers start to act like the men you're supposed to be, then, my friend, we can honestly look at each other, give each other some pound and say, yo, man, it's all good. Now, that's what I'm talking about. This is a poem I wrote about one of my students when I was teaching in Morrisville College. This is called A Late Speech. The assignment was to give a speech on someone you admired. His speech was late. So I told him he'd get a letter grade cut. He told me he didn't care nothing about the grade, he had to give his speech. He opened his mouth and he spoke like I'd never heard him speak before. In fact, I was mesmerized by the words he put together to extol the virtues of his dad. And I secretly envied his father for having a son like him. So I wrote on the bottom of his critique sheet, be sure and let your father know how you feel about him. But he was absent the following few days, and I couldn't give him his paper with my words of advice. And when he returned, he apologized for being absent. And I gave him his paper feeling proud of myself for what I'd written at the bottom. He read it, and he turned to me. He said, Mr. Abdullah, my father died over the weekend. But I had already told him what you just now suggested. And at that moment, I felt a closeness to him, and we embraced, student and professor, one black, one white, one with a father, and one fatherless. And he said he sensed I understood, and I sensed I did. So you see, the speech wasn't late after all. This is a poem that I had taken out of my show for several years, and I just put it back in the fall, and I was performing, and this girl in the audience got very emotional behind the poem, and we talked about it afterwards, so I put it back in the show. And it's called On the Death of My Grandmother. There were no tears. They had all been cried. They had all been shed on other occasions. I remember that tin roof house. She called it home, where when it would rain, every room had its own private drip. I cried then for her. And when we would leave her all alone in those backwoods of Florida with no indoor plumbing or telephone, and head back to New York after our summer vacation, I cried then. And when her own children started to die one by one in the prime of their lives, she was our pillar of strength. So I cried then. And I can remember the endless days sitting on that Dorset's front porch, she telling me stories told before, and my pretending to hear them for the very first time and feeling just a little sorry for her. So I cried then. And when I went away to college, I wondered who'd listen to her stories, who'd appreciate her wry humor and understand her and love her like I loved her. So I cried then. And when I came back, her mind had started to falter, and she no longer remembered me, and her conversation wasn't coherent. So I cried then. And in those last months when she would just lie in that bed with the eyes of a frightened child, I would hold her hand and I'd talk to her, and her eyes would communicate what her lips couldn't. So when the end finally came, there were no tears. Because you see, they had all been cried, they had all been shed on other occasions, on the death of my grandmother. I'm a product of the 1960s. I know some of you are saying, oh my God, that guy is really ancient. But growing up in the 60s, I guess everybody had somebody they sort of look up to or they have a lot of respect for. Nowadays it might be a hip hop artist or a movie star, an athlete. But for me, the person that I had a lot of admiration for was James Brown. Because James Brown music was not only good to dance to, but if you really struggled, you could figure out what the lyrics were as well. So I wrote this poem back in I guess in the 90s. It has a lot more significance now because now that James Brown is no longer with us. So this is a tribute to James Brown. Good God. James Brown's in jail. Ain't got nobody to pay his bail. Now you tell me just what did Mr. Please, Please, Please do? He was no mastermind of Watergate. Those criminals doing time in country club jails where they contemplate about the millions of dollars from books they'll earn when much too soon to society they'll return. James Brown's in jail. Ain't got nobody to pay his bail. You know, I feel like I wanna break out, dun, 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 in a cold sweat, dun, 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 dun. Just what did the hardest working man in show business do? He didn't sleep with Marilyn Monroe like somebody else did, y'all used to love so. He didn't sell no arms to Iran, just told black people to take a stand. Told us once to say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud. And not for him have we failed, because James Brown's in jail. You know, there was a time when he used to dance. There was a time when he used to prance. But you can bet you haven't seen nothing yet until you see him do. And James Brown, good God, my man James Brown doing time, y'all. Ain't it a drag that Papa's got a brand new bag? But you know what? I bet you he's still grinning. Because he's a living in America, but he's in jail. Living in America, can't pay his bail. Living in America, living in America, living in America. And I can't stand it. Good God. This is a poem about the institution of divorce. It's a short poem. I guess what I'm trying to get across in the poem is that oftentimes couples say they're staying together for the sake of the children, when in actuality they may be doing more damage to the children by staying together, because children aren't stupid. They can tell when mommy and daddy aren't happy. I call this Not Even for the Children. I tried though. The years kept mounting up, the resentment getting stronger, and the love, whatever love there had been, had ebbed away. The touch and kisses had become distant as I tried to distance myself from you. Sex, not lovemaking, had become perfunctory, and I loathed what I once loved. But yet I kept struggling. I kept hanging in there, lying in bed, praying I could fall asleep before you accidentally touched, rub, moved up against me. Avoiding eye contact for fear my eyes would say what my lips wouldn't muster up the courage to. And then one bright sunshiny morning, my heart could keep quiet no more. With tears pouring from my insides, I quit the charade, and I faced the hard fact that I could no longer live like this, not even for the children. I did this poem several years ago down in Washington, D.C., and this little European-American woman, I think she was from Oregon, she came up to me afterwards and she said, "I want to thank you." I said, "Excuse me?" She said, "I want to thank you because tonight you helped me make a decision." I had some of my students with me and they turned to me and they said, "Mr. Abdullah, how many marriages have you broken up with that poem?" It ain't only hard out here for a pimp. White folks were shocked. They were appalled. They were dumbfounded that their aggregate of conservative movie pundits chose their first hip-hop song for Song of the Year. Now what bothered them, and let's keep it real, it bothered a lot of black folks too, was the song's title. It's hard out here for a pimp. But you see, it ain't only hard out here for a pimp, but it's hard for a sister working as a temp. I mean, she's got good secretarial skills. She interviewed well over the telephone, had a nice European-sounding surname, but once on site, the sight of this short, haircut, African-looking black woman was too much for them, and she was politely told, "We'll call you." Like I said, it ain't only hard out here for a pimp, but it's hard for a brother who's just trying to pay the rent. I mean, he served his time and now he's back in society and having a hard time getting into school or finding affordable housing or getting into the job market. And you may be thinking I'm talking about a brother who's been locked up. Well, in a sense, he was locked up, or maybe I should say he was locked in to Uncle Sam's lies and promises. A thin line sometimes between bars and stripes. Yeah. It ain't only hard out here for a pimp, but it's hard for a single mother trying to get out of the trench, trying to raise her children amidst TV images glorifying black males with grills all up in their mouths and soft porn music videos where our sisters, sometimes with high aspirations, have to lower them for temporary, instant monetary gratification. And mothers know all too well it ain't only hard out here for a pimp. But it's hard for people trying to get a grip, and not just black people, but LGBT people, overweight, undernourished, unappreciated people, gray-haired, dreadlock, no-hairlock people, southern accent, country-sounding, bushy-acting people. So think about it, and you may find yourself in a category that life has cataloged you into. And you may say, much to your dismay, "Damn, man, it ain't only hard out here for a pimp." I want to be the kind of father my mother was. I want that staying power. I want to give you that sense of, I ain't never gonna leave you like my mother gave me as my father. I want to be the one who loves you even when you do what I done told you not to do 100 times. The one who gets up in the middle of the night to make sure that you don't have an accident in bed. I remember my mother asking me, who did I want to invite to my 5th birthday party. And one day she told some bullies, she said, look, let me tell y'all something. Y'all got one more time to run my child home. And then she looked at me and she said, and you got one more time to let him or I'm going to beat your ass. Yeah, I want to be the kind of father my mother was, who corrected my English when I misspoke, who showed me through her example what being a parent is all about, who laughed at us and she made us laugh, who sat in the bleachers and cheered my brother on but couldn't really understand why he didn't stand for the flag, who worked overtime at her hairdressing profession to make sure that we were some of the best dressed kids on Easter Sunday, who loved us through all our ups and downs, and she continues to do so, and she never ever seems to grow tired. And so that's why I want to be the kind of father my mother was. Because if I do it right, maybe, just maybe, my son might grow up and say, I think I want to be the kind of father my dad was. And that's the way it's supposed to be. I have 4 biological children, and I have 3 children I like to think I helped them become young adults. And when one of the boys was small and I punished him, he turned around and he told me I couldn't tell him what to do because I wasn't his real father. So I took my pen and my pad and I went outside on the porch and I sat down and the words just kept going through my head what he said. And this is what I wrote. Mama said there'd be days like this. There'd be days like this, Mama said. You know, it bothers me when I watch television and I always see these athletes waving and saying hi to their moms. Not that I have anything against mothers, mind you, but I just wonder, don't none of y'all have daddies you want to say hi to? So the next time you want to jump in my face talking about, yo man, you ain't my real father. Yeah, you're right, I'm not your real father. I'm just a man who gets up out of his bed to put extra blankets on you when I think your room is too cold. I'm the one that stands out in the rain and watch you play Little League football. I'm the one who held you and tried to comfort you when you sprained your wrist and you thought you were dying. I'm the one who feels bad because all your teammates have $100 Jordans on, but I can't afford to buy you a pair. But yeah, you're right. I'm not your real father. I'm just a man who picks you up from work so you don't have to stand out in the rain waiting for a bus. I'm the one that your principal has gotten to know on a first name basis because he sees me so often, and it certainly ain't because your ass is so good either. I'm the one who took a part-time job so I could afford to buy you and your brother a bicycle. I'm the one who compliments you on jobs well done. I'm the one who's trying to give you a sense of direction so that maybe one day when you grow up and that you should have an athletic son. And if he ever has a need to look into a TV camera, he just might want to say, hi, Dad. So yeah, you're right. I'm not your real father. I'm just a man who loves you. I never wanted to be white. Regardless of how I used to see you toss your golden locks and flick your hair out of the way of your baby blue eyes and see your movie stars run their fingers through it and wonder what it must feel like to have your fingers glide through that silkiness. Even with all that, I never wanted to be white. And as a youngster, when I watched TV, I seldom saw me. But I saw you bigger than life with your 6-shooters, your superpowers, and your bosomy blondes, and they did appear to have more fun, I must admit. Still, I never wanted to be white. And as I've seen how much political power you wielded, how you always seem to be able to control others and make them feel like the ones in the wrong, still, I never wanted to be white. Because I had a sense of who I was long before Jesse Jackson told us we were somebody. And I know amidst the lies told to me about me by you, that we were and we always have been a mighty race, prone to emerge victorious against our foes. So I never wanted to be white, because I felt no shame in my kinky hair and my thick lips. Your slander didn't bother me. Your oppression, if anything, made me stronger and forced me deeper into myself, loving me, which is why I never wanted to be white. I saw a white boy running. I saw a white boy running. He was at the mall. Perhaps he was playing with a friend. Nobody looked at this white boy running. No one suspected him of anything foul, just a white boy running, with no thought of the repercussions of his doing so. And as I looked at his innocent, carefree face, I thought to myself, how serene his life must be. Afternoon news story, black boy running in the mall. They say he fit the description of a black suspect. Not sure what this black suspect is suspected of doing, but he fit the description. Evening television news story, black boy running in the mall. They say he acted like he was on drugs. They say he had a weapon. Others say he was just a black boy running in the mall. A simple act for some, but not so simple for others. Morning television news story, black boy running in the mall, shot and killed, no weapon found. Shot and killed, no drugs found in his system. Shot and killed for the crime of being a black boy running in the mall. I have 11 grandchildren, and oftentimes they'll ask me to tell them stories about what it was like when I was growing up. And I can remember as a youngster, I used to ask my parents and my grandparents to tell me what it was like growing up back in the day. So I'm just going to share a couple stories with you. First one is called Are We There Yet? My mama fried some chicken, and she made a pound cake, and she packed it in shoe boxes lined with aluminum foil. Then we piled into the car fighting for who'd get to sit by the window first. And my mama, trying to look mean, she turned around and she said, let me tell y'all something. Don't start asking me, are we there yet? You hear me? We all chimed in, yes ma'am. There were no Interstate 81s or 95 south, but what looked like a whole lot of no-number roads that was taking us forever to get to our grandparents' house. At night, there were no Motel 8s or Holiday Inns for us. We had to sleep in the car. And when the packed lunch ran out that my mama had made, my father had to find the black part of town to find us something to eat. And as much as we were tempted to ask, are we there yet? Well, we didn't, because we didn't want to get on mama's last nerves. Gas stations had bathrooms, but not for us. So once when my father pulled into a gas station, he asked the attendant if he had a bathroom that his wife and children could use. And the attendant looked straight at the bathroom sign, emphatically said, nah, how much gas you want, mister? And my father just as emphatically said, give me enough to get to a gas station that has a bathroom my family can use. I was 8 years old, sitting in the back seat. I was never more proud of my father as I was at that time. After 2.5 days of varied car activities at included the license tag game and the humming song game, and one of my mama's favorite. Why don't y'all play who can be the quietest game? We pulled into our grandparents' yard, and in our state of sleepydom, he said, Mommy, are we there yet? And my mother shakes us gingerly, and she says, yes, my babies, yes, we're here. This is about 9/11. The day started as any other day. I took my daughter to school. We made small talk in the car. I kissed her goodbye, just taking it for granted that I'd see her again. My next stop was the post office, and that's where I got the news. I stopped in my tracks. I said a quick prayer. I said, please, God, don't let them be Muslims. I was driving with tears clouding my heart, and I thought, my eyes. I needed to make contact with one of my colleagues who could understand what I was going through, who could understand my pain and my despair, my total sense of hopelessness. I found a colleague and we cried together. My immediate concern then turned to my New York City students with loved ones working in or around the area, and then became riveted to the television as the tragedy continued to unfold before my eyes. Through the night, falling asleep, waking up to find that the nightmare was real. And now seeing a human element added with a little child holding up a photo of a missing parent asking, have you seen my daddy? A firefighter responded over a lost comrade. But for me, the one that tore at my total being was that final cell phone call to a spouse, telling them, I just called to say I love you and goodbye. Back in the 80s, I had a job working at a correctional facility. I was a counselor, and this was in the early years of people being diagnosed as HIV positive. We didn't have a whole lot of information about it. And I noticed how they were treating the inmates that were HIV. They were treating them like they had leprosy or Ebola. And so I went in to counsel this one young man. He was a Latino brother, 26 years old, and he could not read or write. He was illiterate. So this is a poem about how we connected. And I call it the spelling game because he couldn't read or write. There was no introduction. He just said, you know I'm HIV positive. I said, are you positive about that? When I went to visit him in the infirmary, he said, you gotta wear a mask. I said, why? Am I a Lone Ranger? Oh, you must be Tonto. Come here, Kemo Sabe. And I gave him a big hug, and he said, yo, man, like I told you, I'm HIV positive. I said, I don't care, man. You're my brother. I remember one day I was going to sit and eat dinner with him, and he said, you're going to sit and eat with me? And I said, yeah. He said, well, what will people think? I said, do you think I give a good S-H-I-T, what people think? I said, look, man, you're my brother, and I love you. And he said, even though you know I'm HIV positive? I said, look, man, the only thing I'm positive about is that I enjoy your company. Because you make me laugh. You make me feel good inside. You make me enjoy being A-L-I-V-E. So don't come telling me about what you got. Because what you have is positive energy that keeps me H-I-G-H. And you know what? I-L-U-V-U. I mean, I really L-U-V-U. Now that's positive with a capital P. you've got to follow along and keep up with the story. This is called He Smiled. We were childhood friends. I used to stop by his house in the projects and pick him up for school. And his mom, he called her Medea. She'd always be in the kitchen cooking a hot breakfast for him, his 8 brothers, and 1 sister. And one day I told him, I said, man, you got a nice mom. And he smiled. As teenagers, we were not athletically inclined, so we became music buffs. We knew everything about black music from A to Z. Then one day he and I and a friend decided we were going to start a singing group. The only problem was that none of us could sing. I remember one day after rehearsing in my mom's living room, my little brother said, y'all know y'all can't sing, right? I laughed and he smiled. Then we grew up. We went in different directions and I lost contact with him until some years later when I heard of the tragic death of his mom. I felt badly that I couldn't have been with him at that time, so I wrote him a poem and I sent it to him. He told me that when he read the poem, he smiled. Then my cousin called me one day and she said, do you know that your friend Charles is in the hospital? I hadn't seen him in years. I went to see him that very day not knowing he wouldn't be able to see me because by now, well, he was blind. We laughed and talked and joked and reminisced about our lives. And as I looked at him, my friend, I cried. And as usual, he smiled. One day I was sitting with him and I said, look man, I need you to give me some kind of wisdom to help me to be strong when you're gone. And he said, okay, I'll think of something to tell you. I asked him a couple of days later, and he said nothing. Then that Saturday I was gazing out of his hospital window, and I had my back turned to him, and I started to cry. And he heard me and said, yo, man, why are you crying? You act like I'm taking you with me. And when I turned to look at him, he smiled. That Sunday he was having a difficult time breathing, so I told him, I'm going to stay with you tonight. I pulled up a chair next to his bed, and I held his hand, and he told me he was scared. So we talked all that night. Now Monday morning I had to go out for a couple of hours, and I told him, I said, I'll be right back, but I'm going to say goodbye to you because you and I both know this could very well be goodbye. He shook his head, and I held him. And he held on until I returned. And I knew that death was imminent. We prayed. I remember I brushed his hair. Then as I watched the breath start to come slower and slower, I started to cry. But with all the energy he could muster up from that weak, frail body of his, he raised his head up and he shook it as if to say, no, man, don't do this to yourself. He took a couple of more breaths and he was gone. And the wisdom that I had been asking him for, well, he finally gave it to me. And so now, because all his suffering and all of his pain is over, this time, I smile. A lot of times my relatives and my friends are afraid to say or do anything in front of me for fear that it's going to end up on stage. My mother was one such character, but this was one piece she didn't mind my sharing with people. This is called Headlines. Once upon a time, not so very long ago. This grandmother had a whole lot of Halloween candy left over. So her granddaughter came over and she saw all that candy and she said, "Grandma, can I have some of that there candy?" So the grandmother got up and she gave her what she thought was the ample amount. She went and sat down. A short while later, the granddaughter came tugging, "Grandma, Grandma, can I have some more of that there candy?" And the grandmother very lovingly said, "Sweetheart, baby, honey, I think you got enough candy for one day. You don't want to be sick now, do you?" The grandmother said that girl gave her a very piercing, menacing look. And the grandmother thought about some headlines she had read recently about children killing their parents. So she got up and she went and she got the candy. She said, "Baby, here, you can eat as much as you like. If that's not enough, let me know. And I'll go to the store and I'll buy you some more." Because she told her husband, "You'll never read headlines about me. Grandmama killed in her sleep over a Snicker bar." I had two fathers growing up. I had my biological father, and then I had my father who raised me. So this is a poem about my dad who raised me. This is called 17,885. How do you measure love? Do you measure it by your possessions? Do you measure it by the regularity by which you tell that very special someone how very special they are? Maybe it's the gifts you give them, or the sweet nicknames you call them, or the special places you take them. I don't know if it's that simple. And I suppose we have our own way of measuring love. But weeks after my mother died, I found my father sitting at the dining room table with a calculator. And he showed me the figure of 17,008.